It's one day after the Christmas celebration, but we're still in the mood of celebration. That was called Boxing Day, right?
Boxing.
Yeah, but we're not going to boxing. Good morning and welcome Sunrise Daily. I'm Neota Igwe.
Indeed, good morning. We hope you had a really splendid one. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, I missed the opportunity to sing yesterday. I hope I get another. It's still Christmas, so I dare say Merry Christmas to you. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, December 26th is supposed to be, what, Boxing Day? I wonder why they don't call it Unboxing Day. Isn't that what you do?
Yeah, that's what you do on Boxing Day. Unboxing.
Why don't you unbox?
The tree.
Anyway, good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Wow. Indeed, the day after Christmas, many times, many people will be looking at, they'll tell you the day after the high, when you have to do the hangovers and all of that. But it's not just about those ones. At this moment, there are those who are going through some very harrowing experiences. Yes, in the midst of celebrations, there was that news that broke about pain in some parts of Nigeria. And it's not something to rejoice about. It's a painful experience. But we'd like to highlight a situation that happened in Jos Plateau State, and it's... I'm trying to restrain myself here, but...
You know?
But then there's some other part of this whole thing where people take... I mean, life throws you lemons and you make lemonade out of it.
Indeed.
Or life throws you... what do they do? Throw you stones and you use the stones to build you a house. That's what I think the Tudun Biri community thought to do.
Yeah.
Use that opportunity to come together as a people, Christians and Muslims, in the same place, worshiping, and after that, celebrating the season and all that. It was really heartwarming to see that. But it also points to the fact that this is who, I mean, growing up, this is who I know we are, Nigerians. Nigerians are a united people, regardless of faith. Nigerians know how to eat together. Nigerians know how to live together, how to work together. My brother schooled in Bauchi, my eldest brother, and he would always talk about the fact that his best moments, he's in his 70s now, but he tells you his best moments were spent in Bauchi. His best friends are from that area as well. And I met an elderly gentleman a couple of weeks ago who told me the same thing. He said, Nigerians do not fight each other. If you leave Nigerians alone, they can live together. And I have a friend who doesn't know his village, who was born in Kaduna, grew up in Kaduna, went to school in Kaduna, finished school, and now just moved from Kaduna to Abuja. And life continues. So when he tells you, I'm going home.
It is Kaduna.
It's Kaduna he's going to.
That is his village.
And he's originally from the southeast. But as far as we're concerned, he's from Kaduna. So if that kind of person wants to talk, he would speak clearly about the fact that the unity that we talk about is there, but we allow primordial sentiments once in a while to come in there and let some people actually divide us, which is not supposed to.
I think that's why it's very important for us to weed out bad eggs. It's extremely important for us to weed out bad eggs. Whenever it is there is an attack, a communal attack, on the way of life of a people, it's extremely important that government takes a very firm stance, to remove that threat. It is really, really sad what has happened in Bokos and Barkin Ladi. I mean, that 72 people losing their lives. And we understand that the casualty figures, the body count is still going up because we still have vigilante and security men who are still combing the forest and combing these places looking for bodies because these people were ambushed. We want to believe that these people are not a part of us because the heartlessness with which the attack was carried out, begs believing. It is really difficult to watch. I can't imagine that they were very conscious of what it was that they were doing. So they killed these people and they were filming it. Killing mothers, carrying babies on their backs, killing their mothers and removing the babies from their backs, screaming and crying babies. It is really, really terrible. I think that, we've said this before on this program, but I think it's very important to always spare a thought for those for whom Christmas doesn't really bring a very pleasant memory. And there are many people, is it from those in the Madala or whose, churches whose church was bombed on Christmas Day. There are people who will still live with these memories. And every time a celebration comes, they find it very difficult to be happy because what it reminds them of is not of celebration. It's not a joy. It is a very, terrible, time in their lives. And so we spare a thought for those in Bokos and Barikin Ladi this morning. We really sympathize with that community because when a community experiences Black Christmas and the rest of us hear about it, it really does have the tendency to affect how it is we all celebrate our Christmas. I mean, just last year, we were still talking about Owo, people worshiping in church, just about to go about their celebrations. And then, lo and behold, some gunmen attacking their community, attacking the church, marring Christmas for the whole of Nigeria. It is really, really disturbing. But as Nyota has highlighted, in the middle of all of this, while it is that we see how some people are trying to divide us, how some people are trying their best to, bring about bad blood, how some people are trying to ensure that people do not celebrate Christmas. There are also people who are, showing that no matter what happens, we are one. When accidents happen, we are one. Because we understand that, some Muslims were celebrating Eid al-Maulud when this accidental air bombing happened to them. And they've since taken it in good faith, and they're not only just trying to move past it, because it is really difficult to move past the death of those that you love, especially so soon. But they've also found a place in their heart to be able to celebrate with their Christian brothers and sisters. That's exactly what's happening in Tudun Biri village. Those are some of the visuals that you have seen. And it's very important that while it is, we see what it is that is bad, and we must condemn it in every strong term possible, and continue to encourage government to do what is right by these communities, to ensure that the perpetrators of this dastardly, because it truly is a dastardly act, we must also highlight the positives, the beauty of the things that exist in our communities, to see it and say, oh, if we bind together, we really can move on. We really can forge ahead, because there is so much more to us. There is so much more to us as a people. You have to ask, what is it that these people really want? Who are they? Where are they coming from? What kind of people, perpetrate those kind of things and film it while they're at it? They're obviously not human beings. They're obviously not people that we can relate with. And so we ask, that government does what is right by those people and make sure that those people, if they can get them, I hope they're able to, are brought to justice. But in the meantime, we celebrate with the people of Tudun Biri village who are really trying to forge ahead. We salute their courage and their tenacity, and we hope that the spirit of peace will continue to abide in that particular community. Ayo and Bukola.
Maupe, I come with mixed feelings when I reflect on those two events. But I'll start with the positives. One of the reasons that Christmas happens to be my favorite time of the year is for very good reason. And this is it. There is a very fair consensus that Easter is the biggest celebration in Christendom, because without the resurrection, there really is no Christianity. But I, dare say that without the birth of, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, there wouldn't have been a resurrection for us to celebrate, to mark Easter in the first place. And why was he born? He was born because God gave his only begotten son, that we might be reconciled back to him. And one of the things that was remarkable about his life was because he was light. He remains light all through because he resurrected and he lives on. And that is the example that Christians should live by all through their lives. And that's the example for which we're celebrating the Muslims now in Tudun Biri who came to celebrate with their Christian brothers on Christmas Day. And this is regardless of what happens to be their tragic experience of just a few weeks ago. And that is remarkable. And that brings to mind the example shown by the governor, just weeks ago when he showed up to celebrate with Christians during Christmas Carol. And the governor, by the way, is Muslim. And he has reiterated time and again that the time of division in Kaduna is gone. And it's a new era. And that's exemplary. And so we celebrate the example, of Tudun Biri community during this Yuletide, pushing back what has happened to them and uniting with their fellow ones. And that's what Christians, that's what Nigerians now stand for. Whether it's Jollof, we remember that we're Nigerians and we stand together. When it's time for football, we remember that we are Nigerians, and that's what binds us together. And I believe that we should continue to highlight these positives, time in, time out, in season and out of season. But as far as Jos, Mangu local government, Bokos local government, Barkin Ladi, I think we should, reflect more on what brings us to this point time and again. I remember we had a conversation with the governor just after he was newly elected, and he was quite optimistic about peace in Plateau State. I wonder if he remains optimistic, and this calls to mind what we hear from the lawmakers in that part of the country who accuse the police of complicity, because when bandits come and kill 70 people and they have time, to film, to record, it says a lot about these accusations. And the police should, do better by the people. They should do better by explaining and be more accountable about the provision or the failure of the provision of security, particularly, when it matters the most. I dare say that the greatest act of cowardice is when you come and attack vulnerable people when they let their guard down, when they want to celebrate. As Malcolm said, they really do not belong to, Nigeria. They're not a part of us, because Nigerians are loving people. They're courageous people. They're industrious people. They're people who trade with their sweat, and they have results to show for it. They are not people who commit these heinous acts. Ayo.
Jos was always known for, Plateau State was always known for peace. And that's where most expatriates would go to ensure that at least they had a fair idea of where they were coming from, their own communities kind of replicated in Plateau State. So what we're having right now, I do not believe, Bukola, Nelta, Maokwe, I do not believe that these things cannot be tracked. I do not believe it. I can never bring myself to believe that these things just happened and no one knew about it. Look, that word intelligence, do you know how much Nigeria spends on building the intelligentsia in the country? You have any idea? If these things happen and we just cry after it happens, that we're abusing the intelligence community in this country, and I do not believe that is the truth. But, those people were supposed to be celebrating, and now we're talking about this. We'll definitely get more understanding about that. But the example that we would like you to take is what happened in Tudun Biri, which we are also celebrating. My colleagues have talked about it. If you missed the report, here it is.
Mourning, yet grateful for life, Christian residents of Tudun Biri community have converged on Nagarata Baptist Church for Christmas service. Earlier this month, an unfortunate military airstrike in the community left dozens of people dead, in addition to several others who sustained injuries. But the tragic incident has not deterred them from celebrating this year's Christmas, although with mixed feelings.
This Christmas, this year is very bad for us because we are not celebrating it. It's good for our mind. Last year we celebrated it with children every day, and we are celebrating, but this year, it's so easy for us.
We thank
the government for everything, but we need a permanent military base to ensure our security.
Some Muslims in the community also joined in the service.
We are grateful to God. There is nothing we can do over what has happened, and we thank God for seeing this year's Christmas.
In the spirit of the festive season, the Kaduna State government is donating food items to Tudun Biri residents with an assurance that all the promises made by the federal government will be fulfilled.
Let them know that they are not alone. Let them know that government and people of Kaduna State, the federal government and the armed forces are with them. What happened was unfortunate. And I also assure them that all the promises that the federal and state governments have made, we are going to ensure that everything that we promise comes to fruition.
As the residents of Tudun Biri continue to mourn the loss of their loved ones, they want the federal government to address the lingering insecurity in the area by establishing a permanent military formation in the community.
Unity is possible, and like I have said earlier, these things are traceable. With the level of intelligence gathering apparatus and strategies that we have, I think we can do a lot better. Some other thing that needs to be done, and we keep talking about it here, consequence management. When someone does wrong, he is punished, and when someone does right, he is rewarded, indeed. And in this case, what we're talking and highlighting here is the fact that these people, in the midst of the pain, came together to celebrate together. And thank God that we're seeing the end of 2023, hopefully the end of insecurity. We'll see the beginning and the end of 2024 too. But having said that, let's go see what some of the dailies are saying today. Boxing Day. No punches though, but as I said, on Boxing Day. So we start out with The Nation newspaper, and this is what they lead with. Probe into $500 million Union Bank acquisition widens. That's what they're leading with. Special investigator invites ex-CBN Deputy Governor, others. That story has been in the media space for a few days. Yes, the former CBN governor also spoke about that. But Business Day, yes, there's Business Day to look at as well. It's quite interesting. Refining outlook brightens as Dangote PH plants. Refining outlook brightens on Dangote and PH plants is the lead story on Business Day. So hopefully, someone said when the Plateau refinery came on, they said, finally, we'll hear the end of fuel scarcity, and hopefully we'll see a drop in cost. And somebody else replied, drop in cost, how do you mean?
The hopes that we have.
The hopes that we have. Lord. But that's the lead story there. And then 6 ways Forex reform have helped Nigeria's economy. It continues on page 30. Is also there. Then this one I hope will really be sorted out real quick. Startups struggle to raise funds amid economic shocks. It continues on page 31. That conversation about funding and access to funds for startups in Nigeria is a conversation that's been going on and on, and hopefully that will be sorted real quick. But that's it from Business Day.
Okay, well, let's take a look at leadership newspapers this morning. It's interesting how we're starting with business today. Look at this. Leadership newspapers has this: Black Christmas in Plateau as gunmen kill 72. Terrorists kill 8, abduct traders in Katsina. Governor Mutfwang appeals for calm, orders arrest of perpetrators. We responded to 36 distress calls in 48 hours. That's attributed to troops. So you might want to know troops where. Page 4 is where you'll find details. I know that in this season, the security agencies have also been showing what they have on the ground to make sure that we all feel safe. But despite it, this attack still happened. So there needs to be conversation as to how it is that the deployment happened and that maybe residents of this particular local government called out for help and help was late in coming, because 72 people killed in one fell swoop. That is a lot. You also find right here on the front page a number of other stories. Rivers, I will implement presidential resolutions, attributed to Fubara there. Union Bank, again, CBN investigator invites Titan Trust Bank officials. They have that story for you. So in spite of the fact there's a holiday season, it does appear that some investigation is going on around banks and acquisitions. Look at this. Now, palliatives can solve Nigeria's problem. Attributed to Bishop Kuka, he gives out a Christmas message every year to the president. Well, whichever president is in power at that time, you certainly will hear from him. If you don't hear from him at any time, you'll hear from him around Christmas, certainly. And this is what Bishop Kuka has to say this time around. Palliatives can solve Nigeria's problem. You have a number of other stories right here, which I might leave you to do yourself. But look at this. Israel-Hamas war, no Christmas in Bethlehem. We really need to spare a thought for the Israel-Gaza war. We need to spare a thought for Palestinians. We need to spare a thought for the Israelis. Page 6 is where you'll find details. We'll leave that for leadership newspapers.
And turn next to the Nigerian News Direct. You know, it's an irony because Christmas actually started in Bethlehem. We hope that peace returns to the Middle East sometime soon. It's a dream, and it's possible. News Direct is up next, and of course the conversation on palliatives continues as it makes the front page. We'll continue to implement palliative measures to ease burden of vulnerable Nigerians. That's ascribed to the president, and the story continues on page 6. There's just one rider. LP berates FG. LP would be the Labour Party, I believe. LP berates FG, says Nigerians are celebrating Christmas on empty stomach. So when the palliatives are exhausted, what happens? Nigerians need empowerment, and the president's administration, particularly his henchmen, should walk the talk about letting the poor breathe. I believe that's what Father Kuka is also talking about. He particularly said something significant. He says the president should reignite Nigerians' hope in the administration. So Nigerians are waiting. There are other stories to reflect on this morning. Right under the big story, listen to this one, $800 million conditional cash transfer. Politicians have no say in determining beneficiaries. That's ascribed to the NSIPA boss. So this one is huge. Is it different from what's being implemented by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, from whom, from where we understand that about 3.5 million Nigerians have benefited, from the transfer of 25,000 naira per month, and will go on for 3 months. That's according to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. And there's, a register by which that is being administered, the register that has been cleaned up. So is this different? Perhaps we'll be asking of the minister, for clarification on how this would be administered in the coming days. Quite a number of other stories. 7 days to December 31, Forex experts cast doubt on actualization of $750 to the naira, 750 naira to the dollar target, I believe. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct.
Switch to the Nigerian Observer this morning, and it is talking about the same issue that was raised in one of the stories that Mark read earlier. Look at it. Kuka to Tinubu, God, history won't forgive your failure. says president has no excuses before God. Nigerians urges end to partisanship, dismantling of country's evil structure. So when we say, history of God won't forgive failure, what are the KPIs? I can't even begin to bring myself to.
Well, where KPIs are concerned, I believe there's been a huge conversation about how the president has given a target to his cabinet members and he won't tolerate failure. So
that's his own.
Yeah.
But what is Nigerians' KPI for the job that they gave to him? You can't even answer that question. So let's even.
I'm sure there's a long list. Okay. What are the KPIs? Ayo is asking a very important question this morning. So share with us via the mail. We always love to read from you anyway.
For instance, if the KPI is bring the dollar back to 1-1, then that's a KPI. And that will be the day. Anyway, right above the nameplate, Nigeria immigration issues scam alert as Nigerians clamor for FG jobs. Point red flags to identify job scams. And right beside the nameplate, presidential peace deal, not death sentence, will be implemented. That's according to the governor of River State, Fubara. Stories on page 2. On Boxing Day, Obaseki urges Nigerians to extend love to friends and neighbors. Also on page 2. That's the Nigerian Observer this morning.
Have your Daily Trust. Yeah, I was caught doing a sneeze there. But Daily Trust is what we have here. And the lead with that sad story. 145 killed as bandits attacked 23 Plateau villages. We talked about that. And
that figure, we did say that it was climbing. It's hard to, well, that's what the Daily Trust has reported. 100 and how many?
145. That's what Daily Trust is reporting. I do know that some other media platforms are reporting about 77. We reported 70. But as you said, the numbers are rising. Residents seek international community's help. Governor Mutfwang urges vigilance. Take ownership of security, defense chief tells Nigerians. That is debatable again. Some people say, take ownership of security. How? Have we not owned it? What else do we need to do? There might need to be some form of training or reorientation as regards this statement credited to the defense chief. Implementation of Tinubu's resolution not at detriment of my freedom, coming from Fubara, governor of Rivers State. And this is the one. Flight delays, cancellations worsen as NCAA pleads with passengers. I understand some people were stuck at the airport. That story continues on page 20. How Naira scarcity, devaluation, inflation, others dominated economy in 2023. You go to page 21 to read more on that. Then this one, ahead of the Supreme Court judgment, Kwankwaso holds special prayer in Kanu. Ahead of the Supreme Court judgment, you find more of it on page 10. Israel kills over 100 at Gaza refugee camp on Christmas Eve. As the other paper reported, no Christmas in Bethlehem. Kuka to Tinubu, you have no excuses. God won't forgive you if you fail.
Well, the president did say, we asked for the job.
And we're here to do it. And he said, the president has also said he's not here to fail. He's not looking forward to failing. So
we asked for it. We danced for it. We sang for it.
So, dear Mr. President, Nigerians will be holding you to that promise. But then this is the one. Federal workers observe Christmas without December salaries. So how are they observing the Christmas then?
It certainly will be worthwhile to do a poll and find out how it is that federal workers have survived this particular Christmas.
No, it wasn't just federal workers. It wasn't just even some state workers and the private sector. Some in the private sector also were now paid. In fact, some federal workers, I had a conversation with one of them who was paid his November salary in the first week of December.
Interesting.
So, but the jury's out there. But that's it from Daily Trust. and look at some of the dailies. We will be back in a moment to continue the conversation.
When I visited him the last time, it was to try and persuade him not to run for office. I think I've written about that. I told Atiku and himself that they should please leave the grounds for young people. That's the last time we met, about 5 years ago. And I call him secretly Olori Kunkun, a stubborn man. So he ignored my advice completely. So I came to see how he was doing after neglecting my advice. Wanted to see if both he and his wife were weathering Nigeria as well as can be expected, and to wish them a happy Christmas. He's an old friend, as you know very well. And it was as a friend that I told him, don't run, leave this thing alone. But he ignored me. Most heads of state, when they take office, I always leave them alone for about the first year. I don't know if you've seen that, if you've noticed that. Because they need, I know when they come in, they don't start from ground zero. They often start even lower than ground zero, and they have to make up. So I have this personal policy, whether it's Obasanjo or Buhari or Jonathan, you'll notice that during the first year, I hardly ever say anything. And then people ask me, why are you not talking? I say, go and ask the last person whether I spoke during the first year. So I'm adopting the same principle this year. I came here with a 7-point agenda, and we had a very thorough discussion on those items.
Let's have a conversation around that with Mr. Bode Gbore, who is immediate past SSA to the President on political matters. He's also initiator of G2C, that's G2C interface, as government to citizens interface. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Bukola. Good morning, Nigerians. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well.
Thank you, sir.
You know, in the middle of all of this, the engine of government has to keep flowing. The cycle of activities have to be sustained and all of that. First of all, let's begin with Professor Soyinka's comment, about his visit to the president. The visit, the idea of the visit, after which he himself describes as an embarrassing visit, having advised against it and all of that. How much of that is political? How much of that is friendly? What do you make of all of
that? Let me say, first of all, that you must agree that Professor Wole Soyinka has been a long-term friend of the president. If I recall that exactly 10 years ago, when we used to organize, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu colloquium every year, he was actually the chairman of that particular colloquium 10 years ago, 2013. And I remember he said a few things about him which are personal. That's one. Then two, I would say that, Yoruba says that, can I say that? In adage, they say it's Agbakiwa Loja Kori Omo Tuntun Wo. In other words, you do not have the elders in the market square, and then a newborn will have its head turn in the wrong direction. So in other words, we don't expect the nation to go wrong when you have elders in town. Now, I see Professor Wole Soyinka as someone who is completely unpolitical, unbiased, very objective in anything he does and says. And I think that he's looking at the president right now as a friend and saying to his face, I have an idea of the kind of things he might have discussed. I have an idea, clear idea. Looking at him and say, look, if this is going this way, it has to go that way. And I think we need elders in this land at this time who are completely unbiased. You might know that we have many others who have one way or the other, who have some other things behind their minds. But that's not the Nigeria we need right now. We need a Nigeria that stands as one, and one that looks into the president's eyes to say, let's get things right. That's what I think. So I don't believe this is anything political. I think it's friendly, and I think it's, looking at the stage of elder statesman and speaking to the nation.
Would you also say that his 7-point agenda is, not political? If you said you have an idea.
So. I have it clear there, yeah.
Okay, so what kind of things could be on that list?
We are starting too early on that then. If you follow Professor Wole Oke clearly, you see he speaks completely all the time about a particular thing, which is the centralization of government. He says it all the time. And you see, for the kind of nation that we have right now, and the kind of nation I think we've had for a while, we have not even defined the kind of democracy that we really need in our nation, Nigeria. We have not defined the kind of governance that we need. I might look at a nation, this is probably preferring solutions, I don't know if it is, but I think that the kind of nation we need right now is the one that goes back to focusing on the geopolitical zones, 6 of them, and then removing that too much power from the central. This is just my suggestion, right? So that every single time we have things to discuss, we do not have 36 state governors in Abuja and a president. No, rather we'll be having smaller people, clusters, meetings. I hope that's well, that goes somewhere.
I'd like to know more that may be on that list, but first of all, it's important that I take you up on your perceived unbiased, acceptance of the disposition of the Nobel laureate. Yeah. If we went by events of 2015, because he has asked us to also situate his refusal to criticize the president now, based on his antecedents. But if we went by events of 2015, when he didn't support former President Goodluck Jonathan's re-election bid, and he said at that time that, former President Muhammadu Buhari should be viewed as a born-again Democrat. Should we see that as an extension of his support for his friend and current president, Bola Tinubu?
Let me go deep, a bit into governance. You see, we do not see a lot of things on the outside, but those on the inside, they see things clearer. It is completely impossible to come into office anywhere in the world, maybe, but I know about Nigeria, to come into office and then be ready to run in 2 months or in 6 months. It's completely impossible. For the kind of people we have, for the kind of economy we run, you need a minimum of 6 to 1 year before you understand what's before you. May I recall that a question was asked, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, Goodluck Jonathan, and I'll try to remember the third person, 3 presidents of this country, who told us that Buhari was Buhari, who told us after a little while that if they had told me that this is the way this country was, I wouldn't have believed it. Why? Because from outside, you are looking at the situation differently. When you get inside, you see exactly the picture. The best footballers are those spectators. When you are given the boots to play, then you realize that, the field could be against you. In fact, your friends and colleagues can be against you. So I see the reason why he says, no, let me not say nothing.
You're reiterating what he has said.
Yes.
But what I really, I'm hoping that you would respond to is if, events of the past prove that indeed his disposition is more of a subtle support for Mr. President, whom he admits is his friend.
Look, let me finish with, or let me just move directly to that. So if I say that, if the professor says I'm not supporting the second term bid, that meant you had finished 4. In other words, we could score you based on those. That's the idea here. We're talking about someone who just came into office. You see, there's a difference, right? Yeah. So then let me think that supporting the president right now I think it's something we all really need to do. I believe strongly that the leadership of the nation right now is something we all need to do. Why? Because we're coming from somewhere and the economy has not been nice at all. So if you want to put that load on this person who just came in, I don't think it will be fair.
But before you go ahead with
Yes.
that, also, you say that the Nobel laureate is neutral, is unbiased.
Yes.
But in recent times, his utterances, have caused some Nigerians to think otherwise, particularly his engagement with the obedience when he said that the obedience didn't win the election and, the obedience came after him. In fact, the leader of the movement had cause to visit him, to temper that down. So if we, assess that trajectory, that pattern of events, do you still think that he's been unbiased, has been neutral in the scheme of things, particularly if we weigh that also, against the backdrop of his friendship with the current president?
I would rather plead with you to allow us to go past the election period, please. Let's let this election stuff, obedience, the Tinubu team, and let's let that go. We are sitting and running Nigeria now. How can we run this nation? We are not in good, we don't have a good condition right now. Let me put it, I'm trying to choose my words. The economy of the world is bad at this point, the world. So, and I don't think Nigeria is, is out of that. We are all facing terrible times. That's the reason I'm saying I think we need to come together and support the leadership right now. But it's not about separating one party against the other. I think we do that too much.
Well, the politics
it's not a separation, but you can go ahead. Yeah. It's an attempt to view things objectively.
I'm trying to avoid going in or poking the ideas of obedience and all of that. I mean, I don't think we need...
The point here, part of the point that Bukola is trying to make is that, and you would definitely agree with that, a lot of our government or developmental issues are politicized. We're talking about health, it's politicized. Education, it is politicized. Employment, it is politicized. The oil sector, it is politicized. Almost everything is politicized. So in most cases, people tend to view things from the political telescope as opposed to looking at whatever the issues are. The political rhetoric by the political leaders themselves lend credence to that. So if Nigerians are going to see things the way you're seeing it, you're going to have to politically advise us to see things differently. So how do we move past that? Because the trust quotient has been degraded over the years. We can't say that enough. And it is all because of this politicization. So if people are seeing whatever it is that is going on between the president and Professor Wole Oke, it will be difficult to depoliticize their perspective.
I cannot disagree with you, really, because we've taken a long trip down this lane. It's really been for years. Almost everything we do. In fact, as it is right now, you can tell that most of the appointments that we have in the country is viewed in certain ways to be, we're trying to please one area. That's part of being political. The same thing in the past government, which was housed. So I look at a situation, really, I'm used to looking at it that way. Let's find a solution and not begin to or amplify the problems we have. There are problems, we understand. How can we solve them?
And it begins with the communication to the people. How?
I do not know if you permit me to come up with this idea, what G2C is. It's actually a platform we created while I was in office, and we're still running it, to bring the Nigerian people, the citizens, to a roundtable conversation with the people in government, from small places to big places. The idea is to allow what we really call democracy, is the involvement of the people in government. That's what it means, really. So how do we get people to say, this is what we want, not what you think we want? Let me let you know this, that a lot of things that we think, that the president should know, more than half of them, they do not know the real picture of things. Why? Because it's easier anywhere to have yes people around you, to have sycophants around you, than to have people look into your eyes and tell you, that's not the way. That's not what's going on out there. And that's why I think that Professor Wole Soyinka is, I believe that that's the kind of person he is. But, if you find other people come to the president right now and say, and I'm not too sure, they are not trying to be, you know, looking for benefits and all that. But I don't believe it's
should it be so? You said, you know, a good number of things, you know, without quoting you copiously, that are happening, the president doesn't know. Should it be so? The president had, you know, cause to go round the country ahead of his election. He had a lot of engagements with Nigerians. He had a lot of engagements with groups. And he couldn't have said at that time that as a result of his trip around the country, he didn't have a firm knowledge of the challenges. So why, 6 months down the line, do you think that because he has sycophants around him, he's not abreast of what exactly is going on in the country?
Bukola, trust me, it doesn't work the way you think it does. When you go around the nation trying to campaign, it doesn't work that way at all. You do not know exactly at that point what the people are asking for. You're only going out to campaign. You see, there are systems that work around your campaign within your party. You campaign, you know, against one other party and then go into elections. These are different things. When you go around the nation meeting out to the people, painting the people and all of that, they are usually not the people. Do you even want to know that a lot of times when you go around that way, the people there are telling you, please remember us, this is, do this. People don't go for, look at my people and look at what we need. We hardly hear that. I've been around the nation a number of times. Well, that's not what we hear.
Mr. Gbore, it will be difficult for anyone to agree with you for a number of reasons. One of which is the president, the federal government, and I don't care which president was ever in office, has had the opportunity to break the government, to decentralize. The Orange report, I don't know how many times we've talked about that one. True federalism, I don't know how many times we've talked about that one. Decentralize or what's the word now? Relinquish some powers to the states. I don't know for how long we've heard that one, and the president, whichever president it is, still has those things holding on. But I'm not the only one asking questions. Our colleagues in Abuja have questions for you as well. Go ahead, Nilta.
All right, thank you, Ayo. Mr. Gbore, thank you for coming on to the show. You've spoken quite copiously about the things that the president is out to do and what he has promised, and that matter of the president may not know everything happening around him based on the fact that, or he may not have people that are ready to look him in the face and tell him things objectively as they are. But let's look at this, what the president does know and the comments and promises he has made to Nigerians. For instance, we'll start off from that matter of a 50% discount for transportation. Indeed, that promise was made, and it also happened in some places. But you see, the manner of communication. The president made a promise to put Nigerians first at every point in time. There are those who will say that putting Nigerians first is not effectively being communicated. So 50% discount there were 4 companies listed in that press statement that was released. But it only applied, when you go to the country, it applied to only 3 routes. That wasn't known to the public. Is that how we're going to be carried along? How then will people begin to understand the vision and mission the president is on if it is not effectively communicated to the people that he has promised to put first?
Okay, you see, I remember that this idea of 50% discount on transportation was given just a few days ago. I do not believe that there was enough time to plan that and carry that through the whole of the nation. I do not believe that was enough time. Let me see this as a starter. In other words, maybe some other times when we have festive seasons this way, we would have had better knowledge of what to do, and then it might run better at those times. For it to run good at this point will cost a lot of more trouble or even time. If you know what I mean. It's just a few days ago. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not saying that was right, or, that many people should not have benefited from it. No, that's not my point. I hope that other times, in days to come, those things will be better planned and better executed. That's what I think. Aneta.
So let me ask you then. Yeah. I know that you seem to agree with Nobel laureate Wole Oke that it is quite early in the day to criticize. Yeah. I mean, he has said, "I give at least a year to see that to see how they're performing before I begin to give my own public opinion on certain things." But I want to ask you if you think that we're currently on track, because some people who say that morning tells the day. If a government is going to get it right within the next 4 years, we should begin to know from the steps that they have taken so far. From what you have seen from the cabinet that has been appointed and some of the economic policies that have been pelted out, would you say that we are on the right track?
That's kind of tricky. Let me just hope that maybe step by step, time by time, that the things that are, rolled out would work. The reason is this. We've taken a long trip in bringing the nation down to some level. To bring that nation back to its place or to our place will also take time. It will take time. The way I look at it is this. Imagine a nation that stays on a mountain, or maybe say a rock that stays on the mountain and rolls down the valley. It's going to take time for you to roll it back up to that valley, to the top of that mountain. That's the way the economy is right now. So I'm going to be, very careful in saying we are going in the right direction. I can only hope. Why? Because those who will make things work are going to be people like, out of that government, really, not the people in government. I've looked at a few things, and you can even tell. In fact, if you look at the number of appointments and the way things are being shaky on the inside, you can tell that, we're still trying to calibrate and find a balance of what to do and how to go about things. I hope you see the way I look at it. I hope you see that.
I appreciate your thoughts there. I'm just going to introduce another guest. We have also joining us this morning Honorable Wole Oke, who is a fifth-term member of the House of Representatives and also the Chairman Judiciary Committee in the House of Reps. He sat over the Public Procurement Committee in the House of Reps and also has been chairman of the Public Accounts Committee also in the House of Representatives. Honorable Wole Oke, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sunrise Daily.
Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. I'm sure that you must have been following events. I hope that you've been able to follow our conversation so far, talking about the Nobel laureate who says he personally gives presidents at least a year before he begins to come out with any public criticism. You have been in a position of more than just, when I say public criticism, you have sat on very important committees in the House of Representatives, one of them a statutory committee recognized by the Constitution, which is the Public Accounts Committee. That's something that usually is reserved for members of the opposition in the House of Representatives. And right now, you're still a member of the House of Representatives. So from what you have seen so far, I mean, as a fifth-term member, looking at administration in, administration out, if you were to give your own comments on how the president and even perhaps some state governors have started their work, would you say that there is any reason for Nigerians to be hopeful for a better economy and a better standard of living come 2024?
I'll answer yes. That from the way the incumbent president is carrying his functions on, Nigerians should be hopeful for a better life come 2024. I say this on certain parameters. One, the last government led by President Muhammad Buhari, honestly, well, he tried his best, but his downside was to the effect that he had no economic team. He had no financial economic team at all. But when you look at the team that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu they assembled, you give it to them that yes, from their track records, pedigree, he has put in place very sound people, knowledgeable, experienced people. It's of recent that I had an encounter with the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Bagudu, former governor of Kebbi State. I didn't know him that much, but when I engaged him, we summoned him. When we saw the small amount, the party sum allocated to the judiciary arm of government, we asked him, we summoned him to come and explain to us why they have to subject the judiciary arm of government to a beggar. And the gentleman came, and from his position, I was, I became interested in him, and I have the belief that he is a good man, a round peg in a round hole. And when you put him along the side of Wole Oke, the Minister of Finance and Economy, I can tell you that the two of them, if they work together harmoniously with other ministers, particularly those ministers saddled to man ministries for infrastructures. I say infrastructure, I'm talking about education, health, security, works. If they work together and they also engage the parliament, not on the fire brigade approach, before you bring the budget to the parliament, I expect that these various ministers will have engaged the various committees, because the executives, they don't know it all. The downside of the last administration is to look down on the parliament to assume that they know it all. No, nobody holds a monopoly to knowledge, neither ideas. So if the current ministries, engage lawmakers, engage civil society, engage resource persons, people who have the experience, and they look at best practices in the world, I am very, very hopeful, because the government needs money. The government, that as we speak now, a lot of leakages in the system, and once we're able to block all those leakages and get all the resources together, I'm very, very hopeful that come 2024, Nigeria will have cause to smile.
Well, I'm sure that a number of people will be looking forward to smiling. But in the meantime, there are still areas that give us a lot of concern. Yes, the economy is tough, and I know that there'll be many more questions on what other parameters you have seen aside your engagement with the current Minister for National Planning. Security is a very sore point. Just today, or just yesterday, it was reported that 72 people, at least 72 people, lost their lives in attacks that happened in communities in Plateau State, and this is just in just one place. There are a number of other places where a number of people lost their lives. In Ebonyi, for instance, we understand 3 people lost their lives. In Katsina, we understand 8 traders lost their lives in circumstances that were totally avoidable. So for you, looking at the fact that we still have a war, a security war on many fronts, what exactly are you seeing so far? I know that this is the budget defense season, and that members of the National Assembly are just on a small break. They should be back before the new year. What else are you seeing? Because some people are saying the way we're currently structured, unless something drastically shifts, we're just going to keep repeating the same cycle and expecting different results, and that will be the definition of insanity. What precisely are you saying that you think is shifting, especially in our security architecture, that will be bringing us better results?
Thank you very much. You see, I've been privileged to chair the Committee on Defense for good 8 years, 2003 to 2011. And I can tell you straight away that the current security architecture we have in Nigeria needs serious, review. One, they don't have the personnel. The Nigerian defense system now, armed forces, police, they don't have enough personnel. You have thousands, millions of Nigerians, youth, roaming the street that you can recruit, train them, and harm them. Because they have forces, they need information, intelligence gathering. That is the most, which is very expensive. People don't know this side of security financing. Intelligence gathering. Before any incident or attack occurs, if you have a sound intelligence gathering, you should be on top of it. You should be on top of it. And if you're on top of it, what do you do next? You mobilize, both by air and land. But if you don't have the personnel and you don't have the finances to get information for intelligence gathering, you have the intelligence community, there. You need to give them enough funds. You need to give them the manpower they require. You also need to give them the tools as we speak. I don't know how many fighter jets, aircrafts that Nigerian Air Force, I don't know how many they have on ground that are functioning. I don't know how many the Nigerian Army, how many they have on ground. I don't also know the kind of synergy between the three tiers of institutions of the armed forces, vis-a-vis other paramilitary institutions. And civil defense, SSS, and all that, So they all need to work together. But more importantly, ma'am, you do not have enough personnel to police Nigeria, neither tools.
Honorable Oke, you would know this because you've had the privilege of chairing the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Representatives, where you've had to hold some of these heads of organizations accountable a great deal. But when you say we don't have enough personnel, but you talked about funding and intelligence gathering and all of that, what else do we need to have done in these organizations to ensure the security apparatus is strengthened in Nigeria?
Sir, I said earlier that we don't have the requirements to police the nation. And what do? If you look at the budget system that we currently operate, they call it envelope system, which in itself violates provisions of Section 18 of Public Procurement Act, which states that agencies, MDAs, should conduct their needs assessment. So in the instant case, I expect that the armed forces, the security sector, will have conducted their needs assessment, identify the good work services personnel that they need, conduct market survey, know the cost, and the law says clearly that they should be anchored in the annual budgetary estimate. So if they do that, and then the Minister of Budget Planning, without any engagement, just sit down somewhere and hand over an envelope, like they did in judiciary, the judiciary arm of government, the whole arm of government conducted an assessment, and they came to the conclusion that they need 514 billion naira to pay workers, service all their obligations. All the judiciary from all tiers of government, all the states, their pension are now to be paid by NJC and all that. And then the DG budget sits down within the four corners of his office and hand over an envelope of 165 billion naira. So how do you expect judiciary to function? How do you want them to deliver assessment conducted? So in the instant case, in the case of the armed forces security, so all of them, civil defense, Nigeria, DSS, NIA, and the DIA, Navy, Army, Air Force, they've done their needs assessment. They came with what they need to be able to deliver. And don't forget that the Fiscal Responsibility Act demands that, Mr. President, present to the Parliament MTEF. And MTEF speaks to 3 years plan. And when you look at the MTEF and then the Parliament approves the same, you return it to Mr. President, based on which he brings up his budget. Now, I want us to relate the MTEF and then the budget presented vis-a-vis the needs assessment conducted by the various MDAs, which should be the bedrock, the basis for budget formulation. There are variants. They do not add up. So it tells you that something is missing somewhere. So, but if they engage lawmakers and engage members of society vis-a-vis resource persons, you have such a scenario. You have such a scenario.
Honorable Oke, if I may come in here, yes, you've painted the picture of what these organizations go through in terms of needs assessment and what is required on ground. But Is the Budget and Planning Office not also considering a balancing of all the needs that are available and the resources at hand? Don't you think that's also being considered before they put out the envelope system of budgeting that's causing problems already, as you said, violating Section 18 of the Procurement Act? So how do we get to that point where we're balancing what the needs are and the resources available?
Excuse me, the government borrows. I don't see anything wrong in government borrowing, but when you borrowing for what purpose? In the last administration, you go and borrow money for tea, coffee conferences to achieve what? When you have serious problem confronting you, instead of you to borrow and confront those issues that you need. Okay, sir, if you don't have security in place and you want to build roads in certain areas or certain parts of the country, like if you want to build roads in Zamfara, where I grew up, federal roads and all that, and you have security challenge there, and you don't face that security, then how would you be able to deliver there? But you go and borrow money for wrong purposes. That is the problem that we had in the last administration. You took a lot of loans. You depleted our foreign reserve. So now, I don't see anything wrong for President Bola Ahmed Bola Tinubu to borrow from various multilateral, bilateral institutions, with cheaper cost, and then face the issues confronting us. We need to take care. The moment we're able to solve our problems in the areas of security and power, Nigeria will be at peace.
Perhaps one of the issues here, Honorable, is whether or not we as a nation, government, state, federal, are doing enough to motivate these men that you say we don't even have enough. The CDS, the Chief of Army Staff recently told us that 50,000 of his men are not going to spend their time with their families during this Christmas season. And definitely good parents will only be thinking about their families. So, and I know that they are not just men, there are also women in the military who will not spend their time with their families. Do you think, given what you know, we have or are adequately motivating these men whom you say we don't have enough of to do what we need them to do?
I can tell you straight away, they are not adequately motivated. They are not. I exited the entire armed forces and paramilitary institutions. I mean, security, DIA, SSS, and I exited from PENCOM scheme because in other democracies, you don't subject such group of people as if they are doing the normal work other people do. These are people who have sworn to die if death comes their way in the course of their work. So, as we speak, I don't think that our armed forces are well motivated. Find out when they are flying, that their cost of flight, are they discounted? Where do they get their fuel? They buy fuel that costs at the rate at which you and I buy fuel. And these are special people. So we need to do more. We need to run our security system the way it is done in other. How
about their feeding? Do we feed them well?
You go and find out how much is their ration, the amount of money they should be given per day. And if you multiply that amount with the number of people you are deploying, go to the budget of Nigerian Armed Forces, go to the budget of Nigerian Army if they have enough, if they are giving enough money.
And I'd like to pick up on the budget, Honorable Oke. We've had cause to have this conversation in time past, and some of the concerns raised about the budget of the Nigerian Army is that there is priority placed more on infrastructure development within the force rather than on the welfare of men of the force themselves. And we also heard from the CDS just days ago on the program that some of his men go home with as low as 50,000 naira per month. In the current budget, we gather that it was done behind closed doors, the budget defense of the army. What's different this time that you can tell us about this budget? Will there be priority placed on welfare and on the big concern of recruitment into the armed forces rather than on infrastructure development of the armed forces?
Ma'am, the DG budget and the Minister for Budget and National Planning should sit down with the leadership of the armed forces and the leadership of the committees committees, various committees manning this various agencies, and look at the needs assessment, the budget, not the envelope budget presented, handed over to them. They need to look at the budget they prepared. They should sit down and dialogue and discuss, right? You don't body no serious nations take their forces to the market square, or take them to the channels. You need to sit down with them and discuss and be on the same page. If you don't do that, we're just playing to the gallery.
All right, well, let me take you quickly, Mr. Bode Gbore. Given all that is happening now, it's clear that the president has quite some work on his hands to do. But the most important of this thing, which Nyota also reiterated, is communication. How? Giving information to people is not communicating with them until there's some kind of feedback. And we've also agreed here, from some of the things that you have said, that, look, we get the information, but the trust is not there. How does government build this trust in a way that they can actually agree with the president that he has good intentions for them in the middle of everything that we're seeing?
One of the agencies that should actually disseminate this information is National Orientation Agency. I actually had a discussion with the DG a while ago. He came on, on our program. If you check the budget they have in that agency, you'll be shocked and you wonder how they can achieve anything. They have close to nothing. Ministry of Information, how much is their budget? Close to nothing. So how do you do things within a government and then the people will know? It's going to be difficult.
Okay. Well, let's just say from what you have just told us now that government doesn't have the plan to communicate already. But
that's misunderstood.
Well, it's not. From what you have said, because this is not new. We're not hearing this for the first time.
My point is, I think we really need to fund those agencies so they can run better.
Okay.
That's my point.
Mr. Bode Gbore, immediate past SSA to the president on political matters, as well as initiator of G2C interface, government to citizens interface. Thank you so much for your time.
Very much.
We've also had the Honorable Wole Oke, who is 5th term member, House of Representatives, and Chairman, Judiciary Committee, House of Representatives, former Chairman, Public Procurement Committee, House of Reps, former Chairman, Public Accounts Committee, House of Reps. He's also told us that he's headed the Security Committee as well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Truly appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. So we're back right after now to take on another issue. We discussed it earlier. It's now time to delve into it. Stay with us.
And we'll continue the conversation, but this time we're switching focus to that sad situation in Plateau State, where the Christmas celebration was marred by an attack by assailants on Bokkers and Barkin-Ladi local government areas of the state. We're being joined virtually by the Executive Governor, His Excellency Governor Mutfwang. Thank you for joining us, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Good morning.
I dare say, a Merry Christmas, even though I know it wasn't exactly a merry one for you out there, hearing that news of the happenings in Bokos and Barkin Ladi. Just give us an update, if you can, what the situation is at the moment.
Thank you. This indeed has been a very gory Christmas for us. We have had to celebrate with a heavy heart because just when people had finished preparing, we are finishing preparations for the Christmas celebrations. Unprovoked attacks were unleashed on several of our communities. As I'm talking to you, in Mangu local government alone, we buried at least 15 people so far. As at this morning, in Bokos local government, we are counting not less than 100 corpses. I'm yet to take stock of that of Barkin Ladi. Most of the communities affected in Barkin Ladi share border with Bokos local government. And at the last count also, we have not less than 17 communities that were completely touched and brought down by these bandits and criminals. It has been a very, very terrifying Christmas for us here on the Plateau.
You've had calls to talk about this situation several times, the security situation in Plateau State, and you've made promises to the residents of that state about what you're going to do. How are your efforts coming on?
Well, thank you. The reason why we have enjoyed relative peace up until this moment is because of the kind of arrangements we put in place. But obviously, it shows that those arrangements are not adequate. What we have had to do is to motivate the security agencies on ground to make sure that they perform optimally. And I would say to some extent that I give credit to the Nigerian Army and other security agencies, the mobile police that have been deployed to the areas of conflict. Now, sometimes, when you think you are achieving the target, then probably you relax a little bit. Because for me, security is not the presence of security personnel, it's the absence of conflict. And unfortunately, we've had to also engage in a lot of non-kinetic methods. We have had engagements with community leaders to be able to identify potential areas of conflict and nip them in the bud. We've been trying to build communal harmony, and to a large extent we have succeeded. But obviously, with the breach that we have experienced in the last few days, it means that there are some people who are not happy with the progress we have made.
It appears that there are some particular local governments or areas in Plateau State that are like the target, so to speak, because Barkin Ladi and Bokos continue to appear in the news over and over again about these same matters. Is there something else that can be done or should have been done to ensure that they are no longer in focus?
Well, like I told you, what we thought we needed to do, we have been doing. And of course, it's never going to be a finished work. We keep ensuring that we explore possibilities on a daily basis. Like you rightly pointed out, Mangu coming into focus and Bokos suggests many things, but we cannot be able to make any conjecture at this point. But sometimes it begs the question, why these local governments? What is the target? What is the motive? And I can tell you there are many questions begging for answers. That the focus on these local governments are not just ordinary. To me, there is a lot that needs to be explained.
Indeed, Your Excellency, we're still wondering as well and waiting for answers. And I guess it's the reason why we have you with us this morning, that perhaps you can help shed light on some of the things that have been happening on the Plateau. You did say that you have been making moves for peace before now, suggesting that this perhaps has been carried out by people who are unhappy. When you say that you have been making moves for peace, peace between who? And why do you think that these people have now become a target in these communities?
Well, thank you. The security agencies can bear witness to the efforts we have been making collectively. I remember recently the GOC himself had to call a lot of community leaders in the areas of conflict, where we have a lot of the natives and the Fulani leaders come to the discussion table, and let's see what are the issues that we can be able to deal with to forestall future occurrences. And we thought we had made a lot of commitments. We secured a lot of commitments from these leaders that when suddenly these things happen again, then you would begin to ask questions. Certainly, there are people behind this. The attacks, this particular set of attacks were well coordinated and with heavy weaponry. And the question we needed to ask, who is behind this? Who is sponsoring this? And I can tell you that it's beyond my capacity as a governor to unravel this. The security agencies must do their work to be able to identify who are the sponsors of these attackers, who are the people that purchase arms for them, and where did the resources for the purchase of the arms come from? These are things that the security agencies, we would push them, we would urge them to be able to unravel. Because until we cut off the supply in terms of sponsorship, we may never be able to see the end of this.
Particularly disturbing this time around was the fact that the terrorists decided to film their act. And those videos have now made their way to social media. It's very, disconcerting and very disturbing what precisely they seek to achieve by doing that. But I'm a little concerned about the response of security agencies. You did say that the attacks were coordinated in terms of how they have happened within the communities. You've listed at least 17 communities within certain areas. I think in Barkin Ladi. In Bokos, you say 100 people have been killed so far. Mangu, at least 15 people recorded killed in Mongo local government area. How would you describe the response of security agencies to the distress call of these communities, if there was any? Were there any distress calls?
There were distress calls set to.
Okay, we certainly will wait. I think that we'll wait for, we've lost connection there. Looks like the network is giving us a bit of trouble. And it's interesting that His Excellency was just about to respond to that question about, the response of security agencies with regards to distress calls. Because for over 100 people to have been murdered, overnight in different communities, it does raise, very serious questions about our security architecture and the apparatus we have on ground and the ability to be able to respond when communities indeed call for help, especially communities we know before now had also experienced this sort of problems in the past. What sort of capacity is on ground to be able to respond? We'll wait to, to see how we can connect with His Excellency back again. But, these are some of the questions that we currently have on our lips.
Mark, these questions continue to beg for answers. We do know that Plateau State, and over time, Plateau has been known to be one of the most peaceful states. But these incidents pockets of incidents happen here and there. And the question then is, if we keep doing the same thing over and over again, can we get a different result? I don't think it's possible. So I'm sure those heading the security apparatus in the country are also thinking about new strategies and how they're going to attack these matters and get it resolved once and for all, especially as we prepare to go into the new year. But we will take a moment and we will come back to continue the conversation. Hopefully, His Excellency would have been able to get back to us. Do stay with us.
We still have with us His Excellency, the Governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mutfwang. Your Excellency, thank you for staying with us. Just before we went on that forced break by the networks, I was asking you about distress calls and whether or not, there were any distress calls sent out and the response that were given to the people of these local governments where the attacks happened.
Yes, thank you. Like I was saying, I wouldn't want to throw the baby at the bathwater. Certainly, the response time can be better. There were distress calls sent out. Some of the responses would have been delayed for various reasons, including even the nature of our terrain. But generally, I would say that the response has been averagely adequate, because what the information at our disposal was that the nature of the attacks planned was such as to almost bring down these local governments completely. It was so unprecedented and monumental in the plans of these terrorists. But the response of the army has been able to push them back. That what we are even, as enormous as the casualties are, is as a result of the damage limitation done by the security agencies. But the whole essence of this, we perceive, is to break our spirits. In the journey of life, you have obstructions. And I think that the relative peace we have enjoyed, like I said, some people are not happy about it, and they want to set us back. But I can assure you that our spirits are not broken, and will continue on the trajectory of peace.
Well, I know my colleagues in Lagos have questions for you.
Yes, thank you, Malkwe. Governor Mutfwang, you've said earlier that, security is not the absence, well, without quoting you copiously, that it's the absence of communal conflict. And the IG had cause to visit you only a few months ago, and he, in fact, toured the local government that is in question, that has featured prominently in these attacks over the months, that's Mangu local government, to be precise. So my question to you is, did the IG also prioritize the concerns, the infrastructure concerns of the police in these local governments during his tour, of Mangu local government, to be precise? Did he identify the needs, besides emphasizing on intelligence gathering and support from the people to the police? Did he also look at the issues of response for the Nigeria Police commands in these areas during his visit? If he did, why are we back here with this same, conversation about slow response time of security operatives to attacks in these local governments, which features prominently every time there's news about attacks in these local governments?
Yes, thank you. The IG did visit us, just like the Chief of Defense Staff also visited. The Chief of Army Staff also visited. And I think their visit in a very large way contributed immensely to the mobilization of the agencies on ground, the troops on ground. And yes, there are still a lot of issues to deal with about the logistics, the infrastructure need of the security agencies on ground, but those things are always being addressed on a continuous basis. We can never be able to say that we have reached a point where terrorists would not contemplate an attack. But that being said, the terrorists once they notice the sponsors, I want to say the sponsors, because the people that wield the guns are people that come on instruction. They are like messengers and errand boys. But there are people behind them which we need to unravel to be able to cut off the supply lines. The amount of weapons in the hands of these terrorists and the sophistication of these weapons is quite alarming and poses a danger not just to Plateau State, but the nation at large. And therefore, we need more concerted efforts, both locally and with the security agencies, to be able to arrest this situation. As for infrastructure, we'll continue to deploy resources to be able to make better roads that ease better transportation. We'll also be able to ensure that these security agencies have adequate supply of vehicles and so on and so forth. But one thing I must point out is that the flashpoints are so many that oftentimes these agencies, these troops get overwhelmed. That is the truth. And so we need reinforcements from time to time. I know that at some point in time, some of the mobile policemen were taken out of Plateau to other flashpoints, in the country. We need to have reinforcements. With the magnitude of what we have seen, it means that we need to be able to have more boots on ground to be able to contain the situation. This is the appeal we are going to be making across to the service chiefs in the coming days.
These are real issues, Your Excellency, and in the absence of boots on ground and resources for the police operatives to do their work efficiently as possible, lawmakers from your state have called vehemently for the people to defend themselves where there are no guarantees from security operatives that their lives will be protected in critical times. I recall lawmaker Dachong Bagos has cited a section of the Constitution that that empowers the people to defend themselves. Will things get to this level where there are no guarantees for the protection of lives and properties in this local government area?
We hope not. We hope not. Very sincerely, as a government, we are doing all we can to be able to give these guarantees. The only guarantee effectively is that the security agencies do their work. When people resort to self-help and it tends to degenerate into lawlessness. This is what we want to avoid, because it is not as if the people that are being attacked cannot defend themselves, but they are being killed because they want to be obedient and law-abiding. And it gets to a point that we may not be able to restrain them from also resorting to ways and means to defend themselves. As a government, we'll continue to ensure that those charged with the constitutional responsibility of protecting lives and property do it as efficiently as possible so as to avoid pushing people into the temptation of taking laws into their hands.
I wonder what your engagements with these communities have revealed. You talked about engaging with the Fulani leaders and the indigenous leaders in these local government areas. Is this also about land displacement, or what's this round of attacks really about?
Your guess is as good as mine. When people are dislocated from their villages and they have to run for shelter, now we are struggling to provide shelter for these people that have been displaced and dislocated from their communities. If they stay away from those communities for a sustained period of time, the terrorists would come in. As I'm talking to you today, in Rodium local government, in Barkiladi local government, schools have been occupied by these terrorists for almost a number of years now. We have not less than 64 communities that have been displaced, and the lands have been taken over by these marauding terrorists. So if this pattern continues, then you can see the trajectory, that at the end of the day, It's about pushing people out of the land, taking it over. And then we need, therefore, to be able to come up with a program. And I will be talking with Mr. President on this. We need to have summon the political will to give instructions to the security agencies that they must protect the territorial integrity of Nigeria and even the internal integrity of our land boundaries. There are ways of acquiring land, not through violence. And we must be able to resort to constitutionalism in dealing with these issues. People who want land on the plateau are free to approach communities and negotiate and settle in those communities. I don't think people will refuse. But where they resort to violence to take over those lands, you would be sure that this is a time bomb, because it will reach a point where the people will react, and then we're going to have a large-scale conflict. I pray we do not get to that point. I therefore want to, will be ensuring that, first of all, we stop this carnage going on, and then we're able to make sure that people who perpetrated these acts of terrorism, that they are also brought before the law. Because part of the problem we have is that so far there have been no arrests, there have been no prosecutions. And as long as we do not confront these issues headlong, then we are going to have some people feel as if their attackers are being protected. And therefore, there will be a lot of anger that is building up inside their hearts, which can be unleashed anytime. But as a government, we would continue to promote dialogue so that we ensure that people can ventilate their positions and hope that we can be able to arrive at a position that will forestall future occurrences.
Well, Your Excellency, first of all, I can't imagine how you and your officials, your government is feeling about the fact that you were supposed to be celebrating Christmas. State hitherto known for peace is having to go through all of these. I can't begin to imagine how you personally are feeling now. But this is not the first of such attacks on the plateau since you became governor, is it?
Certainly not. Certainly not. It started well before I became governor.
Yes, like but I'm asking whether this was the first time, or this is not the first time since you became governor.
Yeah, you know, I was sworn in the midst of vicious attacks, and we worked assiduously over the 4-5 weeks after I was sworn in, and were able to bring the situation under control. And ever since, we have had relative peace. But since I became governor, this is the most vicious, coordinated attack unleashed on our people.
Now, for this issue to have gotten the attention of the president to the point that the vice president made a promise on the president's behalf, they will do everything to ensure that there is peace on the plateau. What else should we have done that we haven't done? I asked that question advisedly. One of the things that you said, which is quite shocking, is that according to you, from what you just told us now, there are some schools in some communities that are being presently occupied by these marauders. I'm wondering, is that something that the security agencies need some special order to take on, or help us understand why that is the situation and the security agencies haven't been able to root them out? Do they need special instruction to do that?
Certainly, Chaplain. What I can tell you is that under the last regime, the feeling amongst people in Plateau State, particularly the victims of these terrorist attacks, is that it looks as if the terrorists were given official government backing to be able to terrorize them, because little or nothing was done to repel these attacks. I can tell you these schools that are being occupied, it didn't just start now. Some of those schools have been occupied in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Children, therefore, in those schools have not been able to go to school. They have had to relocate. We've even had primary healthcare centers abandoned because of these terrorists, which means that our healthcare system is put in jeopardy. What do we need to do? I think this is where the president needs to come in and be able to give a charge to the security agencies that we cannot continue with this reactionary strategy. We must be able to be more proactive. And, we live in a very tenuous society where people can easily bring in factors to be able to confuse the real issues. What we are dealing with here is a criminal activity of terrorism that has nothing to do with religion. And therefore, if we look at it as criminality and deal with it as such, then we'll be able to face the real issues and be able to come to a definite solution to these problems. But as long as we continue to be a bit reactionary in our response, all we do is to repel attacks. But the truth about it is that there are places where these terrorists have established themselves. We need to be able to flush them out if we are going to find lasting peace.
Well, Your Excellency, security experts that we have spoken to on this program have told us quite a number of times that one of the reasons that insecurity tends to thrive in many communities in our country is because the first line of defense has been collapsed, and that is the local government system. How serious is that issue for you, particularly in the light of the fact that when we have, substantive local government administrations, they're able to cook up their own security committees as well, who would gather all of these and bring to you from the people's perspective, from the various communities, and not just from security agencies. In the situation, I'm not sure if you have that kind of system, within the local government administration in Plateau State. How is that for a first line of defense? What's the plan to activate that first line of defense in the way it ought to be according to the Constitution?
I can tell you very honestly that if not because our local government system is working, believe you me, we would have a more serious disaster on our hands. I think it's not just about the systems, it's about the resolve of the people, the determination of the people to ensure that their lives and properties are protected. I will give kudos to the current local government chairmen in these areas. They have been up and doing, mobilizing the communities, mobilizing the security agencies on ground. And for me on the plateau, that is not an excuse whatsoever. By the grace of God, I can tell you that the local government system is working, even though we do not have elected chairmen at the moment. But it doesn't deter us from doing the needful.
Is there a reason
because it's about
Excellency?
Sorry?
Is there a reason why we don't have elected local government administration in Plateau State?
I would rather not comment on that because the matter is sub judice.
Your Excellency, still on response time, Operation Safe Haven had cause to relocate to Mangu local government area recently, in July to be precise, if my research is correct. If there's an army operating base in that local government area, why is response time still a cause for concern?
Yes, the GOC did relocate to Mangu, like you rightly pointed out. But of course, he can't stay in Mangu forever because he is not only the commander of the Operation Safe Haven, he is also the GOC of the 3rd Armored Division. So his duty goes beyond just the Special Task Force. But there are operating bases all over the state. We have in Mangu, we have in Bokos, we have in Barikiladi, we all have them. The issue, again, is the channels. Sometimes we need to look at the channels through which these distress calls get to the security agencies. we then need to look at also the terrain where these distress calls are coming from. I'm made to understand by the GOC yesterday that on Saturday alone, Saturday, Sunday, they had distress calls from 36 points, almost simultaneously. That would tell you that that is a logistic nightmare. You don't normally prepare that you can have 36 distress calls at the same time. But I can tell you that despite the late response in certain instances, eventually some of the responses were able to contain the situation, that we have been able to reduce the impact of what the terrorists intended at this time.
And you certainly have, you know, people who are resilient. That we have seen over and over again of the people on the plateau. But as we speak at this moment, it is very, I imagine that those people whose communities have suffered these attacks will be shocked, perhaps even traumatized. And there are people who will be needing help. What plans do you have in place for the welfare of the survivors of this horrendous attack?
Thank you, Maupe. I forgot to mention that there are quite a number of people in hospitals which were taking responsibility, including some of the wounded soldiers, were taking responsibility to pay their medical bills and make sure that they get the best of medical attention. For the communities, one thing we discovered in the course of this crisis is that we need to be able to address the issues of trauma. And so we are mobilizing all the medical assets we have on ground to be able to engage these communities in addressing the issues of this mental torture that they have had to come through, particularly the children and the women. And it's going to be a continuous process. In the meantime, the victims of the immediate attack, some of them in Bokos, for example, I know that the local government chairman has been able to liaise with the Kokin Central Church in Bokos, where a lot of them are presently camped. We're sorting them out. Those that can return to the villages that are still manageable, we'll encourage them to go back and improve on the security presence in those areas to give them confidence. But we're also mobilizing food supplies to be able to deal with the inadequacies of the moment. But gradually, we'll look at it from a wider, a holistic perspective. It's a challenging time for us, but by the grace of God, our spirits are not broken, and we are not deterred, and we'll continue to push and make sure that we live in peace with everybody. But more than that, that our people are able to go about their lawful duties without any fear of repeated attacks.
Is there any request you're making specifically of the president at this time?
My request to the Mr. President, whom I'm sure I would see shortly, to be able to bring him abreast of developments in the state, is to appeal to him again to continue to support the security agencies on ground with resources, with assets, and also to be able to give them the backup, if I may call it, the political backup to be able to confront these terrorists, because they didn't come from outside. They are located in other places within Nigeria, and I'm sure they are not ghosts. They can be fished out. And therefore, we want to appeal to Mr. President to summon the political will to get the security agencies to go on the offensive rather than to continue to be on the defensive.
Indeed, Your Excellency, we do hope that your call will be heard. But just before we let you go, we had a member of the House of Representatives here earlier in one of our segments, and he talked about the need for an increase in personnel. Let me ask you this, because there's a conversation that had been some time back about using the National Youth Service Corps as a process of recruitment into the security agencies. Do you think that would help in any way to increase the personnel and training and encourage more people to step up and help protect our communities?
Well, at this point in time, one cannot rule out anything. This is a conversation we need to have continuously. We need to look at, is it the youth corps that we need to equip with military training? Is it the unemployed youths that we need to recruit more into the security agencies? These are discussions we'll continue to have. But let me say it, that we need to continue to sustain our budget for the security agencies and also ensure that that budget is effectively utilized for the purposes for which it was meant. And I think when we do that, and coupled with the deployment of technology in some of these cases, we may be able to achieve better results.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Caleb Mutfwang, Governor of Plateau State. Thank you for coming on the show this morning, and we do wish you and the people on the Plateau well, even in this season.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving us this opportunity, and we pray that Nigerians would continue to pray along with us, that by the grace of God, Plateau will remain the home of peace and tourism. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, quite a lot to really digest there, Nyota. It's really been a very sobering interview with the Governor of Plateau State. I think one of the takeaways there is that their spirits are not broken. And I think that's something that we all can move on with in this Christmas, even as we go into the new year. Despite all that, we get, all that life throws at us, we need to continue to remain a resilient people. We need to continue to keep our spirits up, and we need to ensure that, we help one another up. We empathize with one another, and wherever it is we can strengthen each other, we need to do that. But while it is that the people pick themselves up, the security agencies really need to up their game. I mean, over 100 people killed overnight, 36 distress calls. There'll be questions about intelligence. There'll be questions about, response. So we'll continue to wait and see how we can, get these questions asked and hope that we, are able to get answers to them. But in the meantime, we urge us on to, continue to talk about these matters, continue to bring them to the forefront. That's a duty that we owe Nigerians. I think we have some feedback. I see this from Olagunju Oladile.
Yeah, he says, we tend to prioritize responding to the aftermath rather than the source of a problem, especially in matters of security that impact investment and social well-being. We need to address the root causes of insecurity, which may lie on our political leaders' actions. We need to look at the root causes of this matter. And indeed, we do hope that all concerned, every citizen, every institution, leaders and the led, can also sit back and look at this. What are the root causes of this whole issues? Why are we at this spot, and what can be done to make the difference? We do want, I know I also talked about this earlier, mentioned this, to encourage those who have signed up to protect the rest of us who might be sleeping, the security operatives. We want to encourage you and thank you for doing your best. But as Mark West said, there's still a lot more that can be done. So to everyone out there, the Chief of Defense Staff said, own security. Let's take ownership of our security. While we encourage our security operatives, thank you for what you do. We also want to encourage everybody else to please be more security conscious. And if you need to pass on information, do so wisely and be safe wherever you are, even in this season as well. But that's the much you can take on Sunrise Daily this morning. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Nyota Igbe.
Thank you. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Yeah, taking a cue from you, Nyota, thank you to our security agencies for what they do to keep us safe while we close our eyes. Thank you for watching the program. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Do have a lovely rest of your day.